We must not be abashed to think that we are working with the world's variables and nerves. We need, and need so we may keep learning, our sense of working at the sources of the intellectual life, of having chosen the difficult proximity of greatness, and of having realized in this tiny community a way of learning that seems to others like a utopia. Utopia means no place, but here we are, in an actual place.
Again, I'd like to welcome everyone and congratulate everyone. Students, you worked so much harder than I ever did in high school. It's true, and I'm certain that many of your parents could say the same thing. You worked harder now than probably they have for the past 4 years, than many of us have. So congratulations to everyone. Out through the fields and the woods and over the walls I have wended. I've climbed the hills of view and looked at the world and descended and followed the highway home. And lo, it is ended. The leaves are all dead on the ground, save those that the oak is keeping, to ravel them one by one and let them go, scraping and creeping out over the crusted snow, while others are sleeping. And the dead leaves lie huddled and still, no longer blown hither and thither. The last known master is gone. The flowers of the witch hazel wither. The heart is still aching to seek, but the feet question whither. Ah, when did the heart of man, was it ever less than a treason to go with the drift of things, to yield with a grace to reason and bow and accept the end of a love or a season? I must begin by thanking you seniors for asking me to speak today. I'm honored and moved that you've asked me, a teacher, someone who speaks in this room fairly regularly, and many of whom have seen me regularly at school the last 4 years, that you've asked me back even after the term, after the year, after our time together is at an end. There are worse things you could do than ask a teacher to speak one more time, to extend our time together just a bit. In Reluctance, the poem I just recited by Robert Frost gets it right. It does seem a treason to go with the drift of things, to yield with the grace to reason and bow and accept the end of a love and a season. It's hard to let go of things, to accept the end of a season in your life. So here we are, here together one more time, a teacher and his students. Not surprising at Westover, where honestly teaching has such a remarkable place, where you and your teachers work together in so many fundamental ways. Not too many years ago in the Colorado Springs Zoo, there was a gorilla keeper, a primate keeper, and he was a strange man. And one of the things he did was he would stand at the bars of the gorilla cage. He was one of the gorilla keepers. And he would stand at the bars of the gorilla cage and he would stare into the eyes of the gorilla. And of this male gorilla, large male gorilla. And that's something, those of you who know about gorillas, know that that's something you don't do. Gorillas, you look at gorillas out of the corners of your eyes. And gorillas look at each other out of the corners of their eyes because direct stare is a sign of aggression. So, day after day, he stood at the cage and he stared at this gorilla until one day, famously one day, the gorilla grabbed him through the bars, and by the time the other zookeepers were able to wrestle him away from the gorilla, he had been badly mauled. This story reminds me. This story reminds me of many of you. Not in the sense that you obviously are gorillas. Someday you do not look like gorillas. I'm reminded of the story because your teachers here have been looking at you out of the corners of their eyes. Again, not because we're afraid, though sometimes I do fear Molly and I'll spare you parents those stories. But we look at out of the corners of our eyes at you, and have been, because teaching and learning are something larger than simply the teacher and the student. We're always alongside one another, looking together at the thing taught, at that third thing that is the reason for our being together in the first place. In my case, this third thing is literature. Everything we do in English is in the service of those great books that have called us together. And every activity we engage in, reading, writing, speaking, thinking, every activity in English is for the purpose of understanding those books, those ideas, the record of those aspirations. Sure, you learn to read and write, and you can then do all sorts of other things. And you'll find that in college and in companies, in your workplace, you will, among other things, become grammar specialists. Even those of you who don't consider yourself grammar specialists. You're going to find out you are much better than the people out there. And that you can write now better than most people. Even those of you who don't think of yourselves as good writers, that's just not true, you are. But more than just in learning, reading and writing in English, or differential equations in calculus, in a more essential sense, teaching and learning require that we give ourselves over to something other than ourselves. To the patterns of thought in mathematics, to the interactions of the physical world in science, to the intangibles of the world of aesthetics and the arts, to the study of human nature in the humanities, to the pursuit of excellence in athletics. Teaching and learning, in the fundamental sense, are ways of giving ourselves over to something larger than ourselves. I think we can read Frost's poem as a vision of education. As he would have it, I climbed the hills of view and looked at the world. This looking at the world can be thought of as coming into conversation with the ideas that fundamentally motivate us. Those of you who have sung or danced or acted know something about the ideas of beauty or irony or excellence. If you have worked hard on a research paper in history or science or English, you have learned something about the ideas of perseverance and honesty. If you have read Pride and Prejudice, you have stumbled across the idea of love as moral imagination. But Frost continues, I've climbed the hills of view and looked at the world and descended. Having given ourselves over to the staggering views offered us by mathematics and history and science and psychology and literature and language and the arts and sports, we descend. Once we have given ourselves over to those magnificent ideas, we return. But what do we descend to? Here are Frost's words. Looked at the world and descended. I've come by the highway home, and lo, it is ended. The place we return to after each breathtaking view is ourselves. We come home. The 19th century thinker some of you have heard me talk about before, Kierkegaard, says this of education. Education is that curriculum through which one must pass in order to catch up with oneself. I know that many of you have felt this. Once you have truly learned something, large or small, once you understand, for instance, the idea of tyranny and how that idea has informed the movement of nations, once you have learned English grammar well enough to see into our sentences, in the same way that in learning a language, you see into other cultures, you see other worldviews. Once you learn something, you change. And it's true, as the critic George Steiner says, that she who truly apprehended a painting by Cezanne will hereafter see an apple or a chair as she had not seen them before. There's risk in this, because the person you feel you are becoming is not the one you've grown familiar with. Our education can shake us, can open vistas that are breathtaking and frightening at the same time, precisely because the one doing the seeing, you, is now new and unfamiliar even to yourself. This year's theme topic of The Face of the Other has at its center something similar to this, the risk that as I begin to know another, I must shed prejudices and preconceptions that I did not even realize in some cases I even had. To get to know another is to risk myself before that other. She may or may not like me, but even worse, I may find out that I don't like everything that I am once I truly see her. But to get to know another is to allow myself to be changed by that other, to risk my sense of what I am. Okay, so I've said two things. First, education is concerned with the third thing, the subject or activity that calls teacher and student out of themselves. Secondly, when we are called out of ourselves, when we truly apprehend something new, we return to ourselves changed. Listen to Frost again. The heart is still aching to see, but the feet question whither. That is, our changes also require changes in the direction in which we are headed. When I was your age, I was a sports enthusiast. I played sports in college and for another team after college for a while. And I considered at one point coaching as a career. And as I said, I did not have your high school education. I wasn't really educated in a proper sense until I was in college. And in college, I found myself in two classes in which, I don't know how it happened, somehow I carefully read two books. In the presence, and this had a big cartoon, in the presence of two great teachers. One was a book by Kierkegaard, and the other was by Tolstoy, it was War and Peace. It's my first great book, some of you have read it. By the time I realized what those teachers and books had done to me, I knew that teaching was likely in my future. This was the first difficulty to come to grips with because it meant further education for me and even changes in my relations with my friends. Many of my friends I played sports with, and then when I started talking about Kierkegaard, they had no idea what I was doing, nor did my parents. And the other risk was that it meant that if I was going into teaching and going to pursue an education in philosophy, I had to get more credits there, so I had to take another year of college, and then I was going to go to graduate school. All that was risky, and my father, at that point, decided that it was too risky, that he wasn't going to support me fully in my last year of college. So it really was risky. I had to put myself partly through my last year of college. The feet question whither. So we have to change course. Where are we to set out for? To what purpose do we now apply ourselves? And this can be risky. Education is a risky business. Of course, it also is a means by which we fare better in the world. The education you have gained here will serve you throughout your lives. It has a great practical purpose. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm speaking of the education that changes who and what you are, that makes of you something new, and in some cases, something that is at least initially unfamiliar. As I said, when these two writers got hold of me, they wouldn't let go. And then I found I had to do things that I hadn't planned on at all. This must be the sense of education Eva Braun speaks of in the quotation in your programs this morning. She writes that we are the world's veritable center. We must not be abashed that we think we are working at the world's veritable center. We need so we may keep learning, our sense of working at the sources of the intellectual life, of having chosen the difficult proximity of greatness and having realized in this tiny community a way of learning that seems to others like utopia. Utopia means no place, but here we are, an actual place. The proximity to greatness she speaks of is certainly the view we get when we find ourselves in the proximity of our great ideas, ideas such as truth, justice, honor, God, faith, beauty, hope, love. You are at just the point in your lives when these ideas are going to knock you off your feet. Some of you already have been. And as I've told a number of you, when you get to college, you're going to find that many of your most sacred ideas, ideas of family, love, sexuality, religion, these ideas as well as ideas that you aren't even aware of are sacred to you right now. And ideas that you will find that have been animating you all along that are crucially important to you. Your most sacred ideas will be attacked. It will really be attacked by people who are smarter than you, by people you respect, by good people. And they will be right about some things and wrong about others. No one can say ahead of time what is right and what is wrong about those. You have to find out. And that is going to be very, very hard. Yet, you're going to risk listening to these people and to risk learning about yourself and the world in ways that will change you forever. And this is your work at the center of the world. The things that you feel are the very foundations of who you are will be shaken. And working at the level of foundations, that is genuine education. I hope and pray that you have developed resources with your families and your friends, your teachers, and maybe here in this tiny community that's some sort of utopia. I hope and pray that you have developed the habits of mind and heart that will allow you to engage in this conversation at the world's variable center. And again, the states of a genuine education are those things at the center of who you are. I hope and pray that you are prepared to do the most significant work anyone can and will ever do, which is the work of a genuine education.